That is what I am speaking to in my book. It's very much the sense of, the first chapter is filling out a dating profile, and I say, I've lost a me that I was when I was a couple, right? A couple's half a, so you lose not only your person, but you lose the person you loved, but the person you were, and a lot of the things that you did maybe not fit anymore. And you have to be able to kind of stand on your own in some ways and find an identity as a solo person. And that's scary. I recently was at a Christmas party with someone who'd lost somebody very close to them the past year. And she said, I just don't know how to be in the world. How do you be without your person? I mean, I think widowhood in particular, because this is the person, you wake up together in the morning, you have breakfast together, you plan everything together, you go to bed together at night. It's everything you do for most of us throughout our day. And so, yeah, it's a tremendous loss of self. And that was what my book was about reframing myself as a person on my own and as a midlife 50-year-old person on my own who'd been with the same kind of person who dominated my life since I was 17.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another great author on the podcast, and we're going to be talking a lot about loss and grief and living through that, and kind of, in the name of the show, Living the Next Chapter, but your next chapter after grief. And Debbie Weiss is on today. We're going to be talking about her books, and I'm excited to have her here, and she's got a great story. Debbie, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
It's nice to have you here. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, for those listening, where you are in this great big world of ours.
I am in lovely Benicia, California, which is Northern California, about a half hour from Napa on the Cardenas Strait.
Wine country, right?
Close to there. We're actually the third capital of California, and it's a lovely, kind of small seaside, waterside town.
Nice. Beautiful. I love it. And I'm living vicariously through you as I'm up in Canada and we have snow. And I'd much rather be somewhere warm and beautiful like California. That'd be beautiful. So it's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your author journey, Debbie. How did this all start for you to become an author? Were you a writer before writing your books, or tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I always enjoyed writing. In high school and in college, I was an English major, and then I became an attorney. I was a lawyer for years. At one point I retired real young, like a lot of women lawyers actually, and took a writing class, but not real seriously. And then actually in 2013, I lost my husband. We'd been together for 32 years. And I started writing from there. And I started to return to a weekly writing class and started to send things out and get them published, writing about that experience. Because I wasn't finding things that related to how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started to take more intense classes, and then eventually wrote a book.
So, okay, let's talk about your husband. Tell me, who was this guy? Tell me some of his quirks, his funny things. Let's get a little picture of who this guy was.
Okay, well, my late husband was George Hansen. We grew up in Northern California in the suburbs, about half hour southeast of San Francisco. I'd known him since I was 7 and he was 11. Our parents worked together. They were both scientists. And so I met him over the years at parental parties, and we had an age difference since he was 4 years older. So, when I was 7, I found him a little intimidating. And we eventually started dating my senior year of high school when I needed a date to my senior prom. So I invited him, and he was great. He hadn't gone to his senior prom. He matured late in life. He was an engineering major at UC Berkeley, at Cal Berkeley. He was an amazing hardware engineer and software coder. And he was a tech guy. He was actually wound up the tech lead on Intuit's program, Quicken, for a while. He did that. And so we were together ever since. And he was a definitely quirky guy. He was super into cooking, had a huge cookbook collection. We spent a lot of time buying fancy ingredients and stuff. He could build anything. He built everything from our dining room table to a home network system, very complicated stuff. He could do really great wiring. His favorite band was the Ramones, We saw them every year.
Really?
He was he really was into punk music. Stiff Little Fingers, Dead Kennedys. Definitely. I saw the original Pretenders before the first two guys passed. Clash. Yep. And other than that, he was super smart. And most importantly, he was really nice to people. He mentored a lot of people and he really helped them. And he was kind to everyone.
Yeah. Sounds like the bond that you have together, super strong, to know each other that long in life too. And that's outstanding to hear that. Talk about your relationship together. What was some of the things that the two of you kind of played off each other? How did you support each other?
Well, we supported each other a lot in that we cared for each other. He helped me through law school. I mean, he had perfect 800 SAT, so he helped me to understand bar exam questions. I can tell you now probably how to take a multiple choice test and weed things out. We also supported each other in terms of, just all the things you do together, right? Getting through school, making decisions on jobs, buying our first home together, wiring that first home together and surviving it. I never want to see another roll of fish tape, like trying to do home wiring.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. But, he was kind of the dominant one. I wasn't very adventurous. I was from an age where I just wanted to get my law degree, start practicing law. Wasn't into traveling or doing much. Wanted a nice car, very yuppie as a yuppie. And we supported each other to do the stuff we needed and we wanted to do, but we kind of went with his choices. So he kind of picked what we did, cooking, such. He didn't want to travel, so we didn't travel. He loved to cook, so we cooked complex meals. And at the time, I was very happy, but I was very much kind of, I do what George does.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like a great relationship. So as you go through the journey of losing a partner like that, with such a strong bond over all those many years, it's any type of relationship that gets fractured or broken, or when you lose somebody like this, there's so much you have to deal with, so much you have to work through for you yourself. What was some of the things beyond writing that helped you to kind of refocus and find yourself now that big piece of your life is not there with you?
Grief therapy. I strongly recommend grief therapy. I got into yoga, which does two things. It's not only a very good way of kind of self-soothing the body. I think it's really good. It has that element that something like weights, which I also did, doesn't have. But it also builds a community. And from there, I wound up with some girlfriends at the time because I didn't have a lot of friends. George and I were always together. We were both only children. So we were really bonded. And we had, small, immediate families. So definitely finding community. When he died, it was a little crazy. I joined a bunch of groups, like a car club. I'm not a car person, but I had his old sports car. And just getting out, believe it or not, and just being with people was real helpful. And seeing that I could do that was very helpful. Ultimately, writing was extremely helpful. And again, for two aspects, both the writing part and the community. I joined a class. It was once a week. It was at a retiree center. So most of the folks were older. I was 50 when I lost George. And there's a great group of people. And then some of the more serious people in class formed a writing a group. So there was a class and there was a group that met Fridays. And, I tried to have writing for each thing. So it took up a lot of my time and my week. And again, just created a great community. Some of the people from my writing group are still friends.
It's amazing. I love it. So writing for you has become something very important to you.
It was.
What have you learned about yourself as you proceed through your journey as a writer?
Oh, goodness. I can do some things, but not everything. I could definitely be a better writer, and I could push myself to do things I wouldn't have done, which was great. I'm very suburban, but, I got myself to 8-week conferences that met once a week for 8 weeks in San Francisco, which isn't much for most people, in urban, like, yeah, well, so what? But for me, I was organized. I was there. I had writing. I was happy to put myself out there. Writing helped me. In 2018, I went back to college and I got a Master's of Fine Arts, which is a 2-year program. And, it's with kids, at a college at St. Mary's in Morago, which is beautiful. And that was a great experience. So I really learned I could do a lot. And I got myself published, Huffington Post, actually last April. Also as a Huffington Post blogger years ago. I was in some big magazines through a feeder program, which was not as good as it sounds. And I had a New York Times Modern Love column. So I could do a lot. And I didn't think I could do that. And I think my book is decent. I wrote the best book I could write as a former lawyer who started out, like if you look at my blog, please don't, the beginning entries, I mean, they're bad. They're nasty. So I could do all that. And I could even work with a top tier editor and love that experience. But I also learned what I couldn't do. Couldn't make my book successful, couldn't get it the kind of attention I dreamed of, couldn't get published a lot after it got published, couldn't get my publicist to, that was it out. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is what I learned is that I could really do this process and love it. But what I couldn't do was influence how the book was perceived by other people or really market it in a way that I think was effective.
Yeah, because I think as we have listeners that are authors, they're on that journey and they're learning and they're trying to grow and find their footing as an author. There's a lot of different ways to approach writing your book and sharing your message. And I know it's tailored to you as an author and you have to kind of find your spot. But in general terms, though, there's got to be some basic things that you put in place as a young author that helped and served you as you wrote your book. Was there any of those kind of disciplines or anything that helped you that maybe we can share with an author that might help them?
Well, things that helped me were going back to school. I mean, that's not for everybody. That's intense, but you have to be confident. You have to share your work with a whole different kind of group of people. I mean, God, I had to share my work with millennials and like people in their 20s. And that was, scary. I mean, I was curious if anybody thought this, bougie middle-aged lady stuff would be of any interest. So,
Yeah.
That was valuable to me. At a simple level, being in a writing group is extraordinarily helpful. Just having a group of other folks who want to write, you're accountable to each other. You meet up at set times. Maybe it's only once a month. We did it once a week. And reading to each other and getting honest feedback, supportive but honest feedback is really it. So you're not going it alone and you have checkpoints and people, who to give you feedback is really important. The other thing, and I teach memoir, is, if you want to get into this and see if it's for you, you can take a class. It doesn't have to be going all the way back to school. I taught a 6-week memoir class that I like to think people really enjoyed. I started out taking like an 8-week or something class at a retirement center, and the folks, some of them are writing for grandkids, some people are writing for books. But I think for me, the communal aspect was helpful. And then ultimately finding someone, maybe it doesn't have to be a paid editor, maybe you exchange your book, someone to read your book and give you honest feedback is helpful.
So hearing you say a course on writing your memoir, there might be somebody listening going, wait a minute, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. That's my idea, is to write a memoir. Without giving away the secret sauce to your course, what can we share with someone to help them on their journey of writing a memoir?
Okay. I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but
yes.
But I do this I pretty much do this usually for free. I mean, I just do this for fun. I think the best memoir writing book, in my humble opinion, is Shimmering Images by Lisa Dale Norton. And it's really straightforward. It's not fancy like the Mary Carr books or the books that are more complex. It's really basic. And you just start, if you're intimidated, like you don't do this, right? You don't, or maybe writing anything really. I can speak to nonfiction because I'm not creative enough to write fiction. Not my skill set.
Yeah.
But is to write down, you write down some memories, things that come to your mind, and maybe you do it for a set period of time, and you know what's coming up, and you write it down. And then over time, you put those things together and you see how they feel and what the common themes are. And from there, you'll start to get something will emerge.
Nice. So you just kind of follow the story. And I think, the main thing is just capturing those thoughts and trying to have a way of organizing your thoughts and kind of seeing the big picture of what you're writing.
Yeah, just start by writing them down, writing down your thoughts. It can be a word. For visual people, it can be an image. people, if you're trying to get into it, people do things where they map like all the places they lived or their first neighborhood. There's another book that's very good. I find it a little intimidating. It's Life into Literature by Bill Rohrbach. And he's got a lot of good exercises that will give you material if you go through the book. I taught a class with that with a friend who's very intense and 3 other friends. Oh man, they were like, we can't take it. It's so intense with all the exercises. But he will get you writing, and one of these ideas will stick. People also do things like go through old boxes of photographs. There's nothing. It's not that hard. It's not like you have to do one specific thing or be a good writer to start. It's really just a matter of writing down a few things, even journaling.
It's amazing. Okay, so let's jump into your book. Let's talk about the title of the book, and for those that are readers that are listening to the show, kind of who this book would be a good book for. I think that's one thing as a podcaster. I'm always thinking of my listener and how I can craft a show for them. So who would this be a great book for? And kind of give us a little overview as we jump more into the details of your book.
Well, my book is called Available As Is, A Midlife Widow's Search for Love. Available as is because us older singles tended to be kind of like real estate, available as is with our quirks, wear, and idiosyncrasies. My book is obviously, I think, good for widowed people. And I've heard from a lot of some widowed people who found it very helpful. People contacted me through Facebook or Instagram that they liked it. That makes me feel good. I think it's also helpful for women who are divorced and looking or on their own for whatever reason and looking to reframe themselves or reinvent themselves. I think I've done a lot of podcasts for midlife women and older women. And I think people come to a point where they're like, okay, well, I'm someone who's defined in terms of other people, but how do I define myself on my own? What do I want? What are my passions? How do I get to do that? My book's not self-help. It's memoir with some, I think, self-help thrown in, subtly wisdom. But so it's good for midlife women, singles, midlife people who find themselves on their own. And honestly, I've had a few people who want to write memoir say they found the structure interesting because I had to do a lot of structural work to deal with the backstory and putting it in a way that was interesting. And I did have an editor who was actually a famous author, and she was pleased with the structure. So it's a few people have found it helpful who actually want to structure something like that. But mainly widowed people. I would say my big widowed folk.
Yeah. I think the one thing that, as I talk to friends that have lost their partners, is that that sense of identity, because you're known as the couple, right? You're known as the two of you, and you arrive at a party or you come to a social event, and everyone knows you as the couple. So the question is, hey, so where's your partner? Where's your spouse? That's always kind of like people just expect you to be together, and when that is now missing from your life for whatever reason. It's trying to find, like you talked about driving your husband's car. It's your identity is kind of changed and it's different. And you have to find more of who you are, not in your relationship, but in yourself.
I agree completely.
So does your book kind of speak to that a little bit to help us find our identity?
It speaks to it completely. That is what I am speaking to in my book. It's very much the sense of, the first chapter is filling out a dating profile. And I say, I've lost the me that I was when I was a couple, right? A couple's half of, so you lose not only your person, but you lose the person you loved, but the person you were. And a lot of the things that you did maybe not fit anymore. And you have to be able to kind of stand on your own in some ways and find an identity as a solo person. And that's scary. I recently was at a Christmas party with someone who'd lost somebody very close to them the past year. And she said, I just don't know how to be in the world. How do you be without your person? I mean, I think widowhood in particular, because this is the person, you wake up together in the morning, you have breakfast together, you plan everything together, you go to bed together at night. It's everything you do for most of us throughout our day. And so, it's a tremendous loss of self. And that was what my book was about reframing myself as a person on my own and as a midlife 50-year-old person on my own who'd been with the same kind of person who dominated my life since I was 17.
Yeah. And I think the other part I've heard people mention is feeling a little awkward that they have these new experiences now on their own that they wish they could share with that person that was so meaningful for them in the past. And that whole moving forward but just having fun, enjoying life, living new experiences, but then always just feeling a little guilty that you don't get to share those experiences and that fun that you normally would with your partner. They're not there to talk about it with, and they're not there to share the joys of trying something new, writing your book, writing, like, that's an amazing feat that would be great to share with your partner, the whole journey of doing that. So you're doing new things and you just feel a little bit at times guilty that you don't get a chance to share it with them. And it's something that you're just doing for yourself. So I think having a book like yours, that kind of helps us kind of deal with some of the feelings we're feeling, if it's that or something different, but it just opens the door to think and kind of reframe how we move past losing someone very special in our life.
I had a lot of guilt. Yeah, George and I had a great marriage. We were pretty isolated, so I didn't have a lot of friends when he died. But when he died, he had denial. So as he got worse, he thought he was recovering. And that made his end of life very difficult. And it left me with a lot of guilt and some difficulties when he passed. So I had to go through the book and kind of like how to move through the guilt of loss, right? I mean, for me, it was hard was that my life was going on and I could have these experiences. And for me, they were experiences I didn't have with him and probably wouldn't have had with him because they took a lot of time. He worked weekends and my big thing was going eventually. We're filling up my weekends with stuff because it's very lonely as a single. For me, it was lonely on the weekends when people were with their families. And I'm like, great, now what? I was retired. But it was a lot of guilt that my life continued at 50 and in some ways got richer, not than different, and that his life had ended at 50 and he would never have anything more.
Wow. It's amazing. So, Debbie, for somebody that's listening then, and they're buying your book, they're going to open it for the first time and read it, I would love for you to kind of share with them one-on-one, author to reader, your hopes for them as they read the book, your hopes for them as they go through the chapters and read your words. If you had a chance to sit with a reader in a little cafe and talk about your book one-on-one, what's your big hope for that reader as they go through these pages?
That they find some hope. That they find hope and that they learn from my mistakes and that they find a way forward. Mistake I made was to start dating too soon. I hadn't formed a new self. I was lonely. I was insecure. It would have been better to focus on finding a way to live on my own before looking for a second person to hang out with or even date casually, because that environment, at least for midlife people, I hear for all women, at least, can be pretty hostile. I have funny, bad date stories. My book is really funny. I hope they find it funny. It's actually really funny because life is funny. And I think that I think that's helpful. I would also hope they find some sense of moving forward because I'm a really cautious person and in the past I've had anxiety. And what helped me was to take very small step forward. And I would hope that they could get a sense of that because you're like, well, what do I do? That's like writing a book. What do I do? And for me, it was doing something I liked and, getting out of the house. Like I like to walk. So I would take walks. And then eventually I might meet a few people I liked at things and I would get brave enough to say, do you want to go for a walk with me? And then from there, I got into hiking and I joined some big hiking groups. And so weekends, it's kind of exhausting, but, I was up out the door, going to new places and hiking with groups, and that saved my weekends. And then, that got into different things. So I would hope that the person I'm talking to would get a sense of, this is surreal and it's hilarious. That's what this experience, that's a piece of it, that there really is hope. and that there are ways to move forward when you feel stuck.
It's amazing. I love this. Okay, so what the name of my podcast, Living the Next Chapter. So I always like to ask this kind of my guests is around the title of the podcast, what for you is your next chapter? Like, where do you go from here? What are you excited about? Are there new projects you're working on? What can we look forward to in the future from you?
Well, what am I excited about? A lot, actually. Well, I live on a pretty small scale. I'm not like a huge traveler. I'm excited that I left my home where I lived in a kind of crowded suburb, pretentious, somewhat suburb, and moved here to a beautiful Benicia 2.5 years ago. And I am just loving this town and the community here. And I got my home that I loved. You know, my first home, my husband picked, and it was wonderful when he passed. It was paid off. Thank you. It was manageable, but I picked something I love this time. And that was wonderful in a place that I love. So I'm really excited about that. I'm very excited about my life partner, Randall. We've been together 5 years. We bought our home, my home, to get this home after I was together being together for 3. So I'm very excited to have a second chapter that way. That's wonderful. And I'm not really writing that much, but last year for my 60th birthday, I completed 200-hour yoga teacher training. So I am excited that at the yoga studio I go to, we're going to do a memoir and yoga class. So I'm looking at combining memoir and yoga together. And that's exciting to me. And I'm also teaching some memoir classes. I do them for free. I do them for Tikkun Olam, which is the Jewish principle of repair the world. So I'm excited about that.
Amazing. Now, is that open to people to be a part of that, to write with you and learn with you?
We'll see. I did one through our local literary agency called Benicia Literary, and then I'm doing one through our local group here for senior citizens. But again, that's this area. I'm doing something with a woman who does a podcast. If there was some interest in this, I might do something like differently where I put this out myself or do it through an organization that's more widespread as opposed to something like our local senior center, which is all I do for now. But I'm also hopelessly technically challenged. So like if you said, why don't you just do it through a podcast? It's like, there's no hope. I am, Instagram and I are always fighting. I'm a technical loser. So there's that.
I just think you have a gift that could help so many people. And you as a person just seem to be so giving and wanting to help people in your local community. And we have this global arena now where we can reach so many people and help so many. So having someone like you out there sharing and helping somebody write their memoir or inspiring them even by just reading yours and going through it as a kind of a framework to write theirs. That's a great gift that you're giving to us beyond the content of your book is the structure, which I love that. It's a great point.
Thank you so much. That makes me feel good.
Excellent. So before we go, as far as your contact information and following you on Instagram, because you sound like you just love Instagram so much. I'm saying that funny. As far as connecting with you and as people reaching out to you and talking to you more about your book, how do they find you? Where do we go?
We go to there is my website, Debbie Weiss Author, which I have a web developer, so I think it's working right now. Yeah, Debbie Weiss Author. There is another Debbie Weiss out there. Her name is Debbie R. Weiss. Her book is called Maybe I Can. I think you may have interviewed her. I am not that Debbie Weiss. I am the blonde Debbie Weiss. It's worse because we're both widows, and we're also we're both widows. We're both Jewish, and we're both on a lot of the same podcasts. Like the other day, I got something from somebody who was like, "Hey, your episode's airing here," and I said, "Who are you?" And so you can find me on my website, Debbie Weiss Author. I'm blonde, right? So it'll be a blonde person on a beach, right? Because I'm California. Other Debbie Weiss is New Jersey. So there's that. And I'm also on Facebook as Debbie Weiss. I have Debbie Weiss Author page, but I hated maintaining it. Again, I'm not techie. So I'm there on I'm Debbie Weiss Facebook. And I think Debbie Weiss Author on Instagram. And I'm on TikTok, but I never go there. I don't like it. So sending me a message through my website or a message, friend me on Facebook.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you doing this, Debbie. And again, for those that are listening and they're living that next chapter with missing someone very special in their life,
Yeah.
this would be a great book for them to go through. And I'm glad that you mentioned too that it's light too. That there's laughter, there's joy in the pages as well, and helping people find that joy, I think, is a big task that many of us are struggling with, especially if we've lost someone special to us.
Yeah.
So the idea that your book helps bring a little light and joy to the situation, I think that's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. I hope it does. I mean, it goes through the bad stuff, but there's a lot of humor in there because honestly, dating as a grown-up is pretty funny. But yeah, it's funny. And I'm a humor writer, so.
So before we go, do you have any kind of short humorous story we can share that people would be like, oh, that's hilarious? Like anything from the book or from that comes to mind?
Okay, not my book, but it's not in the book because it was too short, but here we go. Weirdest first date. I go out with a guy. He's very nice mannered. He's very attractive. He's very into fitness. He seems a little odd. He's never really been connected. We're both in our early 50s. He seems pretty young. He brings me flowers, a card. We have a lovely meal in my little suburban town. He's a fitness instructor. And he says, this is going great. I say, yes. He says, I'm going to tell you the one thing that now you'll probably never want to see me again. I said, what? He says, true. I've been abducted by aliens many times. Yeah, I'm as speechless as you are. And then he says, I kid you not, the probing is as painful as they say it is.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's a great conversation starter. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. So how did it go from there?
The pool of dates was so poor and ill-mannered. I actually did see him a few more times. And he seemed very, very young. And at a deeper level, what I could guess, and this isn't that funny, is that something in his life had messed him up to the point where he projected that as being aliens. I don't know if he was an abused kid. Maybe because he didn't act like a grown-up in some ways, and the way he lived. So that was I'm kind of an amateur psychologist. That was the best I could figure out. And that isn't funny, that this man was maybe in some way impaired. But he was the one who broke up with me. He said it was too painful. He'd been dumped before, not by an alien. And he was afraid I would dump him. And I was like, I actually wasn't planning on it. We were just hanging out. It wasn't serious. It wasn't physical. He seemed, again, very young. But yeah. Sadly enough, he was one of the best mannered, courteous, nice looking of the pool. So there you go.
There you go. From another world. That's great. I love it. Debbie, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
And all the things that come with that. I'm happy to have you on the podcast. And, as things develop down the road and, you decide, hey, I'm going to do something else with my writing career, would love to have you come back and get an update from you in the future as well.
Thank you. I would love that, Dave. I really appreciate this. You've been such a positive, encouraging host. I really love that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. All the information's in the show notes. Would love for you to go there and check out all the information. Connect with Debbie. She's an amazing person. And she'll inspire you with your memoir writing as well. So, Debbie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter. And we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement, that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest. And what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf? Go to livinginthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. And I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livinginthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion. And thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.